I don't know what it is, but it seems like whoever runs the YouTube shit is just a total Lennon hater. For the past 10 years, it's been that way. I mean, I never seen such fucking hatred for a person, these people that make videos. John Lennon wanted to, and the video titles, wanted to fuck his mother. John Lennon was a bastard. Shit like that. No, he wasn't really a nice man. I mean, I don't know who said he was. That's not what his function was in a society. Not to be a nice man. Who the fuck said he was a nice man? Brian Epstein, their manager, rich Jewish guy, was a very gay man in a time where you definitely go to prison for that. He was rich. He had a lot to lose. And you'll go to fucking prison. You'll get beat up, which he was beat up many times. People would pose to be gay just to beat up another gay guy that hit on him. Brian Epstein was in love with John Lennon. He was in love with all the Beatles. When he first seen them, they were back from Hamburg, where they learned to dress. Not like, I mean, you look at old Hollywood like James Dean and shit like that, and movies like that, where it's prison. They dress like prison gay dudes. They call them biker fags back then. You know, not like your get your motor running. You don't have, not like that, but like the leather caps, the leather chaps, assless leather chaps, shit like that. It was a very, that's a common theme to this day with gay men is leather clad. You know what I mean? Look at Judas Priest and shit. That's not metal. That's gay. Nothing wrong with it, but people don't know that. Straight people don't know that. Still, they don't know that. And you've seen the Beatles dressed all in leather with biker boots, leather trousers, leather jackets. John even had a leather cap like that in Germany, where they lived, where they basically lived behind a gay porno movie studio or theater. Yeah. I think, in all my reading, that Lennon was sleeping with Stu Sutcliffe, his cousin, before his girlfriend Astrid. Lennon did sleep with Brian Epstein. They went to fucking Spain together, where he wrote a book about it in code, and he talked about it in code. You can't blame Brian Epstein. He's a man who drove a Zephyr Zodiac, very expensive car, expensive suits, and he really loved the Beatles. I think it was half and half. He wanted to fuck this to a gay man like Brian Epstein, and to many gay men, that is the cream fucking dream. Like, holy fucking shit. He fell in love with them. And he did. And he even told Lennon's aunt, who was taking care of him, that I'll never let anything happen to John. He'll always be taken care of. Because Lennon was by anyway. And basically, to get the services of Epstein, that's the kind of shit he had to do. But Epstein did a fucking tremendous job at launching them into the stratosphere. He knew exactly what he was doing. He made novice mistakes here and there, like forgetting to sign names and forgetting to do this, and he fucked up with a lot of the publishing and shit. But he was not a manager. He was a manager of a record store. But he did fucking great. I mean, he loved his boys. So fucking what? You know what I mean? So fucking what? They kept it under wraps. He cleaned up their image because he knew that, you can't just like our managers did. You have to go out there with a set list. You can't drink beer on stage. You can't smoke pot on stage, guys. You can't you know what I mean? You got to go out there with a set list. None of this looking at each other. What do you want to play? What do you want to play? Go out there, have a presentation. Don't mumble. Smile. Be polite. Yeah. And I'll give you your wages. Just like when I was 19 and 20, we had a gay manager too who liked little boys. But I mean, he did good. He did the best he could do. He would fucking write bum checks. He'd rent us limos and cars to drive around in and not pay for them. He'd get us he would get us equipment that I don't know where he got it, but it was definitely stolen. He got us our first real PA. Used to buy me clothes, used to buy me, and I knew he was gay, and I knew that he liked little boys, but I was so jealous over my girlfriend. I used to tell him, don't look at my girlfriend. And he used to tell me, believe me, I'm not looking at your girlfriend. And I knew that's probably true, but I'm like, okay, as long as you don't, because he was such a kind guy, and you didn't know if he was flirting or not. But yeah. Lennon wanted to fuck his mother. I don't think Lennon Bear, he knew it was his mother, but he was so estranged from her that, I think he just needed attention any way he can get it. And that's the way he coped with her being, young, free-spirited. And that's the only way I think he could connect to her. I think his mother used to have a lot of sex around him and shit, and it was normalized because she didn't know how to take care of him, et cetera, et cetera. He's a bastard. Fucking, if you look at Lennon's life, dude, if you look at later Lennon with Yoko, the guy could not get a date, which happens to a lot of famous people, but people thought he was a fucking weirdo. Totally addicted to heroin, strongly bisexual, mean, and just lonely. He even changed his fucking name to Ono, John Winston Ono Lennon. He used to call her mother. That's what he you see what I'm saying? That's why he never had a mother. So he had this, and that's what Yoko did. She controlled his social circles, who could call, what he could do. She even used to tell him that he couldn't watch TV with the volume on. Shit like that. She wanted to get rid of him and sleep with Tony Cox or the other one, I forget. And so she basically gave him to May Pang, her assistant. Here, sleep with my husband. I'm not sure of, and I think that the reason he was so close to her too is I think that was her, that when he was in New York at least, his only heroin hookup was her too. The only thing weird about them and their witchy, metaphysical, occult shit that they did is she kept having what's the word? It escapes me. She kept having not abortions, but miscarriages, because they kept trying to breach birth on October 9th because they were obsessed with numerology. When they induced birth by cesarean on October 9th, 1975 for Sean, he came out shaking. And they thought he might have a spinal disorder or something like that to make him shake. And they found out he was born addicted to heroin. Doing strange shit too, like just totally witchy shit. She you can't really blame her either because she just saw money. I can't help thinking of like Courtney Love and Kurt Cobain to some degree. But I mean, you can't blame her because she just totally saw an opportunity and pounced on it. It must have been annoying if you watch the Get Back footage. Lennon is just so high through the whole thing. And it must be annoying trying to do work and get a record done while he's nodding out, holding back vomit, abusing the staff, asking everybody for heroin, and the Beatles were mean. You had like George's passive aggressiveness. You had Lennon's total cutting snide. You had McCartney, who was just at times could be the most rude motherfucker in the world. Just totally ignore everyone around him and be lost in his own fucking world. They never knew anything else but that life. You know. People said, oh, Lennon with his fucking love and his peace and his love. He wasn't loving. No, he wasn't loving, but because it's like, how can I give love when love is something I've never had? Is one of his lyrics, you know? Because it's true. He called Julian. That's my doctor shit. Don't fuck with it. He called Julian, the result of one night with a bottle of whiskey. And basically, it's just like it's just like he had to have he pretty much had to have that to cover up his gay lifestyles and shit. Why he abandoned Julian? Because he was high. That's around the time he was highly addicted to heroin. They kept that shit a secret for so fucking long. And it's true. I mean, I used to have the black and white outtakes, not 8 hours, only like 45 minutes of the Let It, and that shit still isn't released. Of the Get Back, or I think it's Get Back when they're doing those sessions, and Lennon looks fucking demonic. His eyes are like fucking pinpoint coals and doesn't blink and just talking to himself and just demonic. And Yoko's the same thing. And they edited so much out of it. You could see in the old bootlegs that Yoko's in the studio painting while they're fucking recording. And and there's cameras rolling, and she's doing it right in front of the cameras. Like film and Nagra rolls are rolling. And she's just taking bumps of coke the whole time and making it look like she's ripping tape with her teeth. And Lennon can't even stand up. He's just laying on the floor playing bass. They were fucking abusive. You see George Martin come into the room in some of the bootleg clips and talk to him, and they all got their back turned and just totally fucking ignoring him. So Elton John was one of his good friends, man. I told you, he went to a party once and beat the shit out of May Pang in front of everyone. No one was going to stop him, but no one wanted to be friends with that either. That's back then, and like it is now. If you're rich, gay, or privileged, or in the Beatles case, I mean, they were basically prepped for stardom by their art schools and by shit like that, just because they were throwaways. It was like Shirley Temple or something. They were like fucking totally thrown to the industry. Their parents didn't want them. That's what you do if you love your kid, but he's a gay fuck up. And the Beatles were not poor like people think they were. They were middle class, above, and high class like that too. They had been famous since they were basically 18, 19. You know, Harrison was like 16. They did not know how to function within their own shit. The only friends Lennon had were Yoko's friends, like Elliot Mintz, the Sean's bodyguard, shit like that. That's how she seized his life. You know? You can hear in Lennon's diaries that he's obsessed with what Paul is doing. And at the same time calling him mighty and great, but at the same time bashing him because Yoko just would not have it. She got Paul busted in Tokyo for marijuana, where he spent supposedly 10 days in jail. She said, I'm going to put a spell on him. And that's what she did. Because Paul threatened her security with John. But the whole time, John was obsessed with what Paul was doing. You know how drugs make you fucking delusional like that, where you start believing supernatural, you have supernatural thoughts? He thought he had a psychic connection with Paul, and he probably did to some level. But it was like, if Yoko wasn't around, I do agree that John would have been definitely back with Paul. Like, that's the only thing he fucking knew. Lennon didn't really like anyone. He says he loved Paul, but he didn't like him. That's sad. Linda and Paul tried to reach out to him, and they just would not have it. He's a bastard. His Oedipal complex is fucking. It's interesting. It's noteworthy. It's interesting. It's trivial, but I mean, just the bastardization of Lennon just is annoying. No one says you have to be a good person to be famous or be like, And, think about these kids. Didn't your parents instill in you about drugs? And didn't your schools? These guys were on amphetamines since they were 18 years old. Into sadomasochistic gay bondage. Or they implied it. That takes a lot of guts. I was a punk rocker back when it was easy to do. And it had sexual implications. But back in 61, how's your boy been? What's he been up to? Is he going to college this year? No, here's a picture of him in gay bondage gear. Holding music instruments. Looking entirely gay. I mean, it looks cool and shit. To straight people too, but I mean, when you're gay, you recognize, and I'm not gay, but I just had to figure it out over the years. You're like, that's total. Yeah, these guys are from the sex industry, And Lennon said, they met all these girls and shit, but I mean, I think the only straight ones were George and Ringo. And Paul liked chicks, though. So did John, but I mean, he, back then you had to keep that shit a deathly secret. They reference it multiple times in that old 90s movie, That Thing You Do, where Tom Hanks played this very Brian Epstein type character. It was kind of cool. Because he did love the music. And he did love them. And it's genius. And I've seen it done my whole life, and you've probably seen it done your whole life with boy bands. Everybody loves them. If they're good. You know what I'm saying? If they're good, everybody fucking loves them. And it's funny how the girls just, and you're talking about your trans shit and your gay shit. Well, look at how all these little girls, and they really were, pissing themselves over that shit. But there's also a downside. Like if you want to play to big crowds, they're gonna drive buses in full of retards and cripples to come see your shit. And those, and like at least 50% of the time, those are the people you're signing autographs to and talking to, which I wouldn't mind, but it would get to me after a while. I'm like, all of our fans are in fucking wheelchairs or they have some kind of palsy or they're, it's depressing. And they treat you like a messiah. It's like, where are the little boys? Shit like that. We're talking heavy fucking drugs. They're doing speedballs at, what are they, 25, 26, 27 years old during, right about the time of Sergeant Pepper and shit. 24, 23 at that point. Jesus Christ, you can't get much more higher than that. Doing speedballs. It's fucking 1960, you know what I mean? And you're only 23, 24 years old? Harrison should be noted because he came back from India and his whole mind was, he was over it. He's like, I just don't, it was fun. I'm over it. I don't really give a fuck. This is my favorite story. They're recording Sergeant Pepper, which I always knew was Paul on guitar because Paul's got the most distinctive guitar with that Epiphone through the AC30 or 50. And they said, over the years, not too many people knew that. They're like, George wasn't even there, really. He was putting in a swimming pool. That's how I feel sometimes. It's just like, I don't want to I don't care. I want to put it in a fucking swimming pool. That sounds like Beatlemania to me. At this point in my life, I'm over it. I want to oversee people putting in a fucking swimming pool. That's as big as his shit got. It's like, totally. But they're all on smack, and that's why they stayed together so long. But Paul was always telling John, don't say that. Don't say that publicly. Don't say this. Don't refer to that. Paul was good at keeping the secret. It must have been harder than me or you think it was. He's a bastard. You got to remember, dude, when you call an English guy a bastard, which you kind of was, but I mean, not really. I mean, you just don't call people, you can't help that. Yoko also made sure that Julian was to stay away. Not only did he lose the first time when he divorced his first wife, Cynthia, again when he died. Maybe the times are different, but it's interesting how John's kids play better guitar than he did. I mean, they don't write like that, but they're great performers. If you ever see Sean Lennon perform nowadays, it's super good. And Julian Lennon has been playing since 1984, I think. And yeah, he wasn't that bad. I mean, he was just a fucking loner. Really, I mean, he was just a victim. That's what's good about the industry, though, is they take in these misfits and they take in these people like me, basically, that just don't, they're not gonna fit in, they haven't fit in, and most of them are tragic. I mean, but, he's not that bad. I mean, it's interesting with the titles. I don't mind the shit, but it's just like people put a spotlight on how bad he is. It's like purposely. I love the Beatles. I love all of them. I like Lennon because I liked his voice. And I thought he came up with weird songs. It's just, he could play piano really interesting. John Raging and shit, you love that one. Yeah, man, he hired fucking Phil Spector to do his record for him. Phil Spector wasn't showing up, and when he did, he'd be changing reels in the middle of a fucking take. That's not professional. Lennon had to put a billboard out on Sunset Strip, I think it was, that said, "Have you seen this, man?" And it was a picture of Phil Spector. Supposed to be producing our fucking record. I'm just wondering what. I think that's the pull in the Svengali sway fucking she had over Lennon. I think that's what it was. And she just wanted to get rid of him at one point. His feelings, I mean, how do you think he felt? Like he's stupid, he doesn't know what's going on?